I just started the stream with the mic muted. I think that's the first time for me, guys. What the hell's going on, everybody? God bless you all. Welcome. It is episode number 2 of the Just Win Baby podcast presented by Liam and Rich. That is Just Win Baby, one of the most profitable handicappers in the space. We're happy to be joined by him once again. Episode number 2, UFC 285. Nothing better, my man. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. I was trying to tell you that you were muted, but I guess it didn't go through. Yeah, I'm all good, man. Another profitable weekend last week, hitting that Suarez ITD sub round 2. I think out of the last UFC events now, I think 13 of them, I think there's only one that I didn't profit on. So yeah, good winning run at the minute, man.
Absolutely unreal. I can't say the same, but can say been profitable to start this year, plus 6.6 units, 35% ROI. Been keeping it very tight week in and week out. Very small, looking to go for my prop bets, looking to zone in on the reads that have been winning. We did it once again last week. Called the submission, called that guillotine choke if y'all were live in spaces as well. So we've been on a good run here, good roll. And that's been for fights that really weren't worth our time and energy, Rich. You know, frankly, like the UFC been phoning it in a little bit recently. I think this is a much more interesting fight offering. So the last thing I want to say before we get started breaking down the card, guys, my man Blake Perry, he's back. Cage Warriors tomorrow, 170 pounds. Welterweight. When most men look for a way out, Blake Perry finds a way in at Blake MMA 170 on Instagram, guys. Go support, show him some love. He's a fucking great American, and he's a tough guy. I know him personally. He's a hell of a guy. So make sure you go support Blake. He's fighting again tomorrow, and he's a tough son of a bitch. So fade him at your own peril. Next up, Loik, Radzhabov, Esteban, Ribovics. That is the prelim opener here for UFC 285, and it's going to be contested in the 155-pound division, lightweight banger to get us started. Esteban Ribovics, another one of these prospects coming out of the Argentinian regional scene, and he looked pretty good on the Dana White Contender Series. Obviously a guy that carries some power. He's got good finishing instincts. All of his wins are coming inside the distance. A little bit unproven in fights that go longer. So that's the real question mark here. Loik, obviously a much more proven guy coming from the PFL scene. He's fought very tough competition relative to Ribovics here, so understandable why he would be favored. Do you agree with the line here? You think it's a little bit aggressive pricing? What do you think?
No, I think the line's about right. I'd have put him at like minus 200, something like that. So yeah, I think the line's right. I've been calling him Loki all week, so his name's Loki now. Yeah, I like him. He's got the experience edge, obviously. This RG guy, he's got no ground game. That's what I recognize from tape. I think he's going to put on a wrestling clinic. I think he's strong on top. And I just think the overall experience and, the disparity in the grappling is going to be big here. He's never been knocked out low-key. And I don't think this Argentinian's going to be the first to do it. So yeah, I don't even mind a prop bet on this one. I think Loki can finish him. I really think he's going to have his way with him on the ground. The only defense Esteban seems to have is this Kimura to stop the takedown, which doesn't work. And then off his back, he doesn't offer much. So
the Sakuraba Classic, man.
Yeah,
Come on, it works sometimes. Once in a blue moon.
Yeah, I've seen it plenty of times. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I don't think it's going to work here. He's too big, too strong, Loki. And I think he's going to get a finish, man, to open up the card.
Yeah, I actually can't push back there. I had a small amount on Thomas Paul, I believe, on the Contender Series in that fight. So it wasn't really high on Esteban as a prospect coming in for the same reasons that you mentioned. Kind of had some vulnerabilities on the ground, willing to get into contentious exchanges on the feet as well, put himself in danger. So yes, he's 11-0. Yes, he sports a great record. Not necessarily jumping in front of that here at a minus 250, a minus 275, but also not really bullish to get on that side. Don't think that this is a great first matchup for him in the UFC. And just the quality of gyms coming out of Alpha Gym, no training partners that are in the UFC compared to Kill Cliff FC on the other side, just a way big difference in quality. So even if he's gotten one camp in with a good team, not going to make up for a huge difference there, in my opinion. So next up on the card, guys, we can move to the 135-pound division at bantamweight. Farid Basharat is taking on Damon Blackshear. And Damon Blackshear, one of these guys that comes in with a lot of regional experience, got into that war with Yusuf Zalal. Yusuf Zalal is a guy that I have just gotten wrong from the beginning. I thought he was a really talented fighter. I've bet him a number of times in the UFC, and it just never panned out. I feel like the physicality wasn't quite there. The finishing instincts weren't quite there. He would have times he'd hurt people on the feet, not follow up. He'd have times where he'd get in a good position on the ground, lose the position. So Yusuf Zalal for me was a little bit unreliable, and that's kind of what happened in the Blackshear fight as well. Allowed Blackshear to take the early advantage there, ended up storming back on him. I don't think Blackshear is a guy that the UFC is pegging as a future star in the division, but he does have a good quality of competition. He has been through the ringer on the regional scene. So again, this is not the kind of guy that I'm looking to step in front of with a Basharat brother here who is training with the right guys. He's training with talented fighters. Hasn't really been pushed at this level of the game, I would say. So for me, it's a fight that I'm content to sit back and pass on. What do you think about this one, JWB?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is the line is off, regardless of who you think will win. The line is wide, but that doesn't mean you go and bet Blackshear just because the line's off. I still don't think he wins this fight. Yeah, he's fought some good competition. Danny Sabatello, who couldn't finish his breakfast. He ain't finishing anyone, so he lost the decision to him. Who else did he have? Sabatini. Yeah, he's a wrestler, Blackshear, and a pretty decent one. I think he might win round 1 here, but then I think he just falls off a cliff big time. I think he can get finished late. We've seen in the Zalal fight, he didn't like the body shots. He doesn't like the striking. He's not much of a striker himself offensively. So I think he's going to wrestle hard round 1, maybe have some success. But then in round 2 and 3, these these Basharat brothers, they fight similar, man. These peppering shots, high pace, volume. And I think it's going to get to Blackshear, man. I don't think he can handle it. I think, that Zalal fight in round 3, that showed us what's going to happen in this one. Late round 2, round 3, I think he's going to find the TKO on the feet, man.
I love that take. And I'm looking right now at the props here. Basharat by KO is as high as plus 500. You can find, and Basharat ITD is plus money everywhere. So if you guys like the Basharat side, maybe you take a smaller play, look to target him inside the distance here against a guy that's been to a lot of decisions. Glenbot pointed out in the chat. I always say sharpest chat in the game. Appreciate you guys rocking with us. A lot of people in the chat right now live. So appreciate you guys, but I think that's a good point. Over 1.5 is cashed in 9 of the last 10 fights. I think that these guys probably very high clip go over 1.5, but do they make it all the way to the end? That's the real question mark. And the other thing I just want to point out is both these guys like to grapple. Both these guys are willing to get into those scrambling situations. That's where people get submitted. When people lock down and try and hold on to position and not move anywhere, that's where it becomes a lot harder to finish somebody. Whereas if somebody's just willing to engage in frenetic scrambles, especially at a weight class like 135, wouldn't be surprised if somebody got submitted here in the early going. So that's the only danger there for your over 1.5, Glenbot, but I appreciate the shout.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I was chatting to somebody today. I told them about the better light. I think Basharat's going to finish him late. And they told me he doesn't have power, though. And I likened Basharat to Nick Diaz. Obviously, there's a big, there's levels. But in the way that they fight, he's got the grappling if he wants it, but he likes to stand. And, it's the accumulation of these shots. They get people tired. And if you're not up to the pace and they take you into deep water, and if you can't handle it, you're going to get finished. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here, man. I don't think he can keep up with the pace. So it's a good live betting opportunity as well after round 1. So, yeah, Basharat all day, man.
Awesome. Tend to agree. I do think that Blackshear, if he was to win this fight, it would probably be in one of those frenetic scrambles. Could pop out on the back. He is a pretty decent grappler, and that's over 10-1. So I think if you're looking for the Blackshear side, maybe you take a smaller play on one of those props, but I think he's going to have a harder time dominating somebody like Farid. So Basharat brothers, I think they get another one. Next up, guys, Jessica Penne taking on Tabatha Ricci at 115 pounds here. And I think that you've got a take on this fight that's a lot more bullish than mine. So I'll kick it to you first here.
Yeah, man. Haven't I always? Yeah, I've got nothing nice to say about Ricci. She's really shit, to be honest. I put a tweet out early in the week about her. She's supposed to be a BJJ girl, but everything I see from her, she doesn't show me that she's got elite grappling. To me, when I check her Tapology out, she's got a bunch of grappling matches that she's like winning and losing by points. When I watch her fights against the worst girls on the roster, Maria Oliveira, she's doing nothing. I bet on that fight. I was like, how can she not finish this girl, man? One takedown and it's done. and she gets her to the ground and she just like stalls. She can't keep her down. And now because Penne is 40, I'm supposed to believe she's going to do that to her. So yeah, I'm not buying it. There's a big reach difference between them both. Ricci's 5'1". She's got a 4-inch reach advantage on her. Penne has, obviously Penne's long and lanky, and she's a decent grappler. Penne. It was only like a year ago or so when she was beating Lupe Godinez at like plus 300. So yeah, I'm definitely taking her here over Ricci. Ricci can't fight on the feet. She's got no stand up. She throws some pathetic leg kicks that do nothing. She shoots a blast double that gets people like Oliveira down, or Vivianne when she wants to be a retard and go for guillotines the whole fight and land on her back. Just bad IQ, man. And I think Penne's got a bit more about her. So this is a great dog opportunity in my opinion. And you definitely don't play Ricci. If you don't like Penne because she's old and she got leg kicked in her last fight, fair enough. But you ain't betting Ricci at minus 275. That's just not smart, man.
Yeah, I'd have to agree here. My general philosophy, as you know, is that I prefer to bet on underdogs just because of the volatility involved in this sport. I'd much rather have less fights that I have to get right to make a profit long term. And so for me, this is a clear dog or pass situation. I bet Tabatha Ricci in the past. I am profitable betting her fights. I had her in a parlay against Maria Oliveira. I had her straight against Manon Ferro for a 0.37 unit bet at like plus 450, and she got absolutely smoked in that fight. But then I also bet 2 units at minus 110 against Polyana Viana. And that was a fine spot. So I feel like there are different times to get on and off the train, and this is a time to probably get off the train, right? She's moved to being a big favorite in this spot. She was just minus 110 against Polyana Viana, and Polyana Viana would probably be evens, if she was to fight Jessica Penne right now, because they both have the same kind of skill set, which is that they're talented on the ground. So Jessica Penne is probably less likely to get armbarred than a lot of the other women that she would face in the division. So then it would be about, does Polyana Viana knock her out in the first round or lose a decision? So for me, I think that this is the kind of fight where I haven't played it. I'm not, eager to go out and play it, but the subline being a 10-1 for Jessica Penne does seem a little bit aggressive to me here. When she's just a sneaky back taker, she's not the world's greatest finisher, but when she gets on the back early and dry, she tends to be really dangerous. So the youth is the real thing that's keeping me off this with vigor, right? Like, there's a couple fights on this card we'll talk about where there's just a massive gap in the prime age, the athleticism, things like that make me a little bit hesitant. 12-year age gap here makes me a little bit hesitant, less hesitant in women's MMA than men's MMA. But still, that's the thing that's weighing on me. But I think it's a clear dog or pass situation.
Yeah, and another thing to add as well is, BJJ better than me. Like, how's this girl touted as if someone says, what's Ricci about? She's a BJJ girl, isn't it? She's not, a striker on the feet. If you've seen anything that indicates that she's good at BJJ, because I haven't.
I'm pretty sure that she is a judo and BJJ player. This is from memory now, so please don't crucify me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure, Moise is right about this. So she's not like invincible on the mat or anything. I do think she is better than a lot of women at getting fights to the ground, engaging people in grappling, holding on to some control positions. But also we've seen the fear and the hesitancy, right? In the guard of Polyana Viana, she's hopping up out of the guard, which is a sign that she doesn't want to engage there. She doesn't want to get into an exchange where she could be finished. So that's not a sign of confidence in your own grappling per se, certainly not in your ability to pass the guard. Was it the path of least resistance? Yes. So I don't think she's going to get that here. I think it's going to be more contentious. And I think Jessica Penne is just stickier with her grappling, if you know what I'm saying. Like, when she gets into grappling exchanges, she normally extends them. Even if she gets powerbombed by Lupe Godinez, she forces you into these longer exchanges, holding the back of the head, holding a tricep. And I'm not sure that we see that always from Tabatha. She's more likely to exit an exchange than stay in it for a longer period. So that's where Jessica Penne, being a veteran, having that savvy, it could be to her advantage.
Yeah, it's like recency bias as well. People see the last fight of Penne, when she got leg kicked by Emily Ducote, who's also a bum. It didn't look good.
I bet a ton on Emily Ducote there as well. I just thought the athleticism gap there was so clear and staggering. And I was like, what is she going to do to her? On the ground, she's a BJJ brown belt. On the feet, she is way better. I was like, I don't know how she loses this fight at like minus 135.
Well, it's just a smart bet, isn't it? Because Penne doesn't wrestle offensively. She takes what you give her. So she's going to do the same in this fight. She's going to keep it standing if she can. Ricci's going to try her takedowns. And I think Penne's got enough about her to either negate the takedowns, or if it gets to the floor, get back up, or even wrap her up in something. So I think it's a very close fight, man. And the line's off for sure.
You know what I'm curious to see here is as we move to the next fight, what is the price on the fight to end by sub? I am not. Here we go. Either fighter by sub is plus 320. Whoa. I think they're going to grapple all night. I don't think that's a bad play at all.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be monitoring my books and taking a closer look at that prop for sure. But we can move to the next fight here at 135 pounds. Mana. I think it's Mana Boy Martinez is his nickname, taking on Cameron Saaiman. He's one of the other South Africans representing Team CIT alongside of Dricuss du Plessis, who we're going to talk about later. So Cameron Saaiman, basically like the protege of du Plessis. We've talked about him before. Young guy on the come up, fairly talented, but nothing that will blow your hair back. I say talented for his age. He's a young guy. He's clearly put together an MMA game, but getting rocked on the feet, doesn't seem like the most physical guy for the division. Mana Martinez, though, the same thing could be said. He's not the most dynamic athlete. Does he have power on the feet, though? Yes. He's got a money left hook. He's put down fighters that are historically pretty durable in the first round before. I believe Chris Mutino. So there's a couple guys on his resume that make you go, oh, okay, it could be all right. You watch his tape, it's not great. He can be out wrestled. He could be taken down. His chin isn't perfect either. But again, we're talking about a pretty sizable underdog, I believe, in this spot. Looking at the lines right now, you could find as high as plus 250 on the market on Mana Martinez as a underdog here. So I think that, from a marketing standpoint, the UFC is probably rooting for Saaiman here, but Martinez is a dangerous fighter, got some power. Showed in his last fight, he can deal with somebody who's trying to wrestle him and come back in that third round, which I thought spoke better of his cardio than I expected as well. So I've seen some growth from Mana Martinez from the regional scene to the UFC, but I'm not sold on him as being, a deserved favorite here. But should he be plus 250? I'm not sold on that either. What do you think, JW?
Yeah, pretty much agree, man. I do like Mana here. I do think the line's off as well. I faded Saaiman in his debut. I watched his Dana White Contender Series fight, and he won that fight because the Asian guy gassed. He won the Kozlo fight because Kozlo gassed. Literally, they had nothing left in the third round. So, I'm not sold on him yet. He hasn't proved to me he's anything decent. He's got bad wrestling. I give Mana the edge there. Mana's got a sweet armbar as well off bottom. He needs to be careful and watch. And like you say, he's got power in his left hand. Mana. He's dropped many people on the regionals. So I think, I think the lines sway people. If there weren't a line set for this fight and people didn't already see the minus 200 or whatever it is for Saaiman, I'd say this is a coin flip of a fight, man, for real. So I think I'm going to have to take the dog in this situation. He's got too many upsides, man. Like I say, he's got the power on the feet. He's got the experience. He's got the BJJ edge, in my opinion. The only thing I think Saaiman's got in his favor is the youth, that kind of like tenacity to win, to want to be there. But yeah, I think Mana's the side here all day, man.
You know what it is, in my opinion? It's that he has 2 split decision wins in the UFC. And so when you don't have convincing wins, people are hesitant to back you moving forward. And I do think that, people would argue, oh, maybe he lost that Brandon Davis fight. Guido Canetti, that fight was so close and he's 42 and whatever. But Guido Canetti is no slouch. Like, he's gone out there and knocked out guys, 10 years younger than him. So I think that when we look at Mana Martinez after this fight, if he wins the fight, people are going to say, wow, that, now he's 3-1 in the UFC. Maybe we shouldn't have faded him going into this fight. So just some food for thought there, but definitely. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I faded Mana many times. When I look to fade him, I look to see if his opponent's going to wrestle him, because I know he's got strong stand-up and I know he has got power in that left hand, which worries me. So whenever I've bet against him, I've looked for someone who's going to wrestle him and get the submission on him. I hit that Dana White Contender Series sub on Draco, or whatever his name was, Rodriguez. But yes, Saaiman isn't going to do that, man. He's a kickboxer. He wants to stand. His takedowns aren't even that great. Like, he doesn't even like the ground. If he's taking you down, it's because he's not going to be he's not comfortable on the feet in this situation. So yeah, I think that's been said, man. Mana's the side. Great underdog spot here.
Would have to agree. So the next fight on the card, 170 pounds, welterweight fight. We got an Irishman back in the building. Ian Garry is taking on Kenan Song. And I think Ian Garry is going to roll in this fight, to tell you the truth. I think that Ian Garry inside the distance isn't a terrible look. The only problem is he's not the most aggressive guy in the world. He's kind of content, to sit back and ride out decisions at times. But I think, the style of opponent is everything. I think that Kenan Song is probably going to try and bring the fight to him. I think his best chance to win the fight is to land a knockout blow. Ian Garry at times is a little bit hittable early on in his fights, but we've also seen him punish people that try and get aggressive and come into the pocket. And he ended up knocking out Jordan Williams, which a lot of his opponents were not able to do. So I think that I'm interested in Ian Garry here, and I think I've donated on his submission prop before in the UFC. I might do it again here just because I think that would be the path of least resistance. I also think that he could club and sub this guy. But yeah, those would be my two instinctual leans here. Ian Garry inside the distance, maybe a smaller play on him to win by sub here. It hasn't happened yet in the UFC. It hasn't happened in a while in his career. So I think I might get a little bit of a decent price there. And I think he's going to be the higher level ground player if he decides to take it there. What do you think?
I've literally got nothing to say. I don't like Garry at all. I don't like his personality, his demeanor. I don't think he's the truth like the UFC are trying to push. I hope he gets knocked out. He probably won't. He'll probably win by knockout. But yeah, just a complete pass for me. I don't want to know. I'll go make a drink, have a smoke, whatever.
I love it. I think that this fight is not going to last long, would be my other take on it. I think it's going to be a one round and done in all likelihood, potentially a second round finish. But yeah, a lot of people in the chat seem to like round two. I don't hate that, boys. I think that's going to be one-sided. Next up, we got a 185-pound fight between Julian Marquez and Marc-Andre Barriualt. This seems like the Twitter talk of the town, right? Which I never like. I try to avoid those fights like the plague. And especially, right, like, what's interesting and fascinating is, like, we almost always see one fight between two terrible fighters that becomes like the war horse of the week. And last week I ended up talking myself into Don'Tale Mayes. Never again, man. If there's two fucking donkeys out there, with all due respect, I'm gonna let them do donkey shit, and both these guys are just a little bit unreliable with your money. When it's MAB, you don't always get the same product every time out. Guys known for his durability. Everybody's talking about he's got an iron chin. You can't knock this guy out. He gets folded in 41 seconds. It's like, all right, well, that's tough. I think that the fact that he goes out there and gets an easy round one sub doesn't really tell me much about what his upside is in the division. I feel like MAB, what he's good at is landing volume. What he's bad at is getting hit with everything that comes back. So he applies good pressure. He's got, good aggression, right? He's still coming forward swinging even after he's been knocked out. So I like that about him too. Marquez, I don't know what to expect from the guy. He finds ways to win fights, so you got to give him that credit. Outside of that, he does nothing well, especially in his recent fights. He seems like a punching bag. He's standing there. He's easy to hit. And again, like the last fight, it looked like he did not want to be there from pretty early on in the fight. So not a guy I could trust with my money, especially in this kind of short underdog range. I think I bet on him once at plus 170, and he got folded up in the first or second round there too. So just not a guy that I think is extremely talented right now, not showing me a great output each time out. The UFC kind of tried to give him a platform to build himself as a star. He shot himself in the foot too. So former Kraus guy, I'm leaving this one the hell alone. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not really interested in it either. Like you said, it's just funny how everyone, each week there's always that one fight that people are divided on. And yeah, Barriualt is definitely the Twitter mush this week, in my opinion. It is a real thing. I've seen some bad bettors on his side. That doesn't mean I'm going to go play Marquez. There's things from him I don't like. The only interesting fact I can see on this one is Marquez is something like plus 600, if I'm not wrong, for the decision. I don't mind that. I think everyone's going to pick violence because Marquez got knocked out in his last fight, but that was against a decent opponent with power. So yeah, I think he's got the cardio to keep up with Barriualt's pace, and I think it's going to be a split decision to one of them, and I don't mind 600 on the Marquez side.
Yeah, I can't be mad at that. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised to see that it's that high. Now let me just check. Yeah, the fight goes to decision is also plus money. So if you think it's headed that way, not a bad way to play it. You can get plus money on both these guys, but you're going to be sweating through your shirt. I'll tell you that, because both these guys fight like boneheads. So I wish you guys the best of luck.
I was going to say, I don't think Barriualt even fights like that, to be honest. Yeah, he pushes the pace, but he doesn't really hit with much power. It's like volume and an accumulation. If you choose to die on him, he'll take the finish. But notoriously, like earlier in his UFC career, he was like going to decisions with people. So I think he's going to clinch, throw some strikes, clinch, and it's going to be that kind of boring, slow fight. And it's going
he's like a Zach Pauga, head under the head, just throwing some short shots to the body, go for a little cheap takedown. I agree with you. Barriault's not a great finisher, despite what we've seen recently.
Yeah,
but he does apply pressure. So if I was to play Barriualt, I think Barriualt round 3 or decision. I don't even know the price, but just like that's probably his win condition in most of his fights. 2 cents says power bar, grinds out a sloppy one. Yeah, I can see it. It's probably going to be one of those greasy split decision type fights. Go ask my man Tim Troiano if it's worth laying it down. Next up, guys, Vivianne Araujo taking on Amanda Ribas. We can't stop Brazilian hate in this one because it's a Brazilian on Brazilian matchup. Araujo, her last fight, going against the title challenger on the card, on the very same card, Alexa Grasso, loses the decision there, was able to win a round, lost a pretty controversial decision to Katlyn Chookagian. So she's been neck and neck with some of the women at the top of the division. On the other hand, Amanda Ribas cost me so many coins when she did not get that decision against Katlyn Chookagian. I was baffled, thought that she won that fight. So that one hurt me, boys. I think I had 6 units on Amanda Ribas plus 165, and I was already counting the money and didn't come to pass. So that is what's left a sour taste in my mouth here. Fading Vivi last time out was profitable, but I don't like the skill set that we have here with Ribas. Ribas is a very talented fighter, but I said after her last fight, I prefer her at 115, where her size is a little bit more dynamic. The one thing is, I think that her ability to take a punch could be much better at 125 because she is deceptively muscular. As far as I'm concerned, I felt like when she was cutting to 115, that did affect her ability to take a punch. I think at 125, she could do a little bit better there, but she's still just too unreliable on the feet for me to go against somebody like Vivi, who is a little bit heavy-handed and also I think has some skills of her own on the ground. I don't think she's a complete pushover there. So I don't have a bullish take here, but not willing to lay the chalk here, even if it's short chalk on Amanda Ribas in this spot. Prefer to look for an underdog opportunities. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the Vivianne side, but I do think, again, she's a bit mushed. It seems everyone and their mom is on her this week. I agree with what you say about Ribas. She should be down a division. She is deceptively strong. And I like these head and arm judo trip throws that she keeps doing on all these girls. I think with Vivianne's aggression, she's going to be able to hit one of those and maybe get some top time. She's quite strong on top. And we've seen in the past, not lately, but we've seen in the past that Vivianne can, gas a little bit coming into the third round. So I think I'd take Ribas in this one. Probably decision. I don't think she can sub her or anything. But on the feet, I think there's a clear winner on the feet, and that's Vivianne. She's stronger, better combinations. Ribas does this like autistic kind of movement that's just weird as fuck. I don't know what it is.
Less likely to get randomly knocked out for sure. I mean, she just gets knocked out sometimes.
Wrong weight class, man. Yeah, she was in wrong weight class. I cashed when she got nuked by Rodriguez, man. She just can't strike. She should play to her strengths, get the girls down, and sub them, man. I remember her debut against Emily Quitmeyer. Yeah, she was like plus 800 for the submission, man. It was glorious. So yeah, I like Ribas here, I guess.
Fair enough. And yeah, I mean, if pressed for a pick, Ribas is the younger fighter. She's a little bit more marketable. They probably prefer to move on in the division, get some fresh blood in there. Vivi just lost that decision that nobody cared about against Grasso, but I don't know. I think it's a highly contentious fight. Sharp distribution appears to be on the Vivi side at this point in the week, so I'll take a wait and see approach to that fight. Oh, this one's got an emotional pull for me. Derek Brunson, same college wrestling coach that I had, gives gang stand up. This is a tough guy. This is a great competitor. I put out a tweet this week. They got no love because Derek Brunson gets no love, but I said the people, like the most money made backing any fighter on the card, like just purely betting on them, Derek Brunson, plus 1,600 units on Bet MMA. The most money lost fading any one fighter on Bet MMA, Derek motherfucking Brunson, over 1,000 units down the drain, people trying to fade this guy. So I think that Derek Brunson has had one of the most deceptive runs in MMA when he when people think he's about to break through and become like a champion or something, he loses by knockout in the first round. But when people are thinking like this guy's a bum, this guy sucks, he can't win a fight, he normally ends up overperforming people's expectations. And I do think, you know, when you look back at the run that he went on, he had a little bit of circumstance go his way, right? Kevin Holland, terrible wrestler, terrible grappler, built for 170 pounds, moved down a weight class. We've seen, even at 170, not perfect, Kevin Holland. So, like, clear flaws with Kevin Holland. Got the win there. Wasn't able to get the finish. Had dicey moments there over 5 rounds. So, the writing was a little bit on the wall. Edmund Shabazian got exposed as a guy who has no cardio to go 3 rounds. So, it took Derek Brunson exposing him in that main event spot. I believe it was a 3-round main event. But, you know, Derek starting to talk about retirement, starting to get towards the end of his run. You know, a guy that was in a really big title opportunity, you know, or potential title opportunity, let's say, right? A #1 contenders fight last time out. And I bet 7.5 units on Jared Cannonier, one of the biggest bets of the year on Jared in that spot. And I'm not even a huge Jared Cannonier guy, right? I haven't bet on Jared in every UFC fight, but just like the prospect of Derek Brunson fighting a guy who is built like a house, who is extremely strong, who was going to be able to go for the full 15 minutes when Derek sometimes struggles to do that, especially against big physical guys. It's all just tough to imagine. Now you got Dricuss in there. Dricuss is a guy that I can't quite get right. You know, I'll say this. I've been high on him since he got to the UFC, but I bet on him to finish Brad Tavares. He goes to decision. He's like the only guy to ever do that. I'm like, wow, what on earth? Then, you know, I was like, man, this guy, he's not who I thought he was. He's gassing in round 1 against Brad Tavares. I got to fade him against Darren Till. Then I forgot that Darren Till has the takedown defense of a middle school wrestler. So I was like, okay, I'm about to lose my bread. Now we have this opportunity again where I'm like, Derek Brunson could definitely take this guy down 100%. He might submit him in the first round. He might knock him out in the first round. But if he doesn't do that, it becomes such an uphill battle for Derek here because he's got a younger guy who's hungrier, who's closer to his prime, who's a mean prick, who hits with power, who's got some submissions of his own. I have to side with Dricuss du Plessis here, but I'm not laying the -2XX. I've seen this story before. Everybody's so confident that Derek Brunson's going to lose, and he knocks the guy out in the first round and then does a crazy dance and whips into it. So I'm just saying, don't sleep on Blonde Brunson, but Dricuss is probably rightfully favored to knock him out here. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I agree with most of it, man. The only difference we have is I do like the South African Plessis here, and I have bet on him. Mainly for most of the reasons you mentioned. You know, it is his retirement fight. I think he's kind of just showing up here. He's talking about he's having one last run. I don't think it is. I think he's content with where he is in his career and that it's coming to an end. He knows he ain't touching the belt. Yeah, there's problems on both sides. Obviously, I think fight doesn't go the distance. Should be like -1,000. But it's like -200, so that isn't bad. I do think Derek will have a little bit of success with the takedowns, But I think even if he did have mega success in round 1 and took him down and had his way and laid on top of him, I think that would do more damage to Derek than it would to Plessis start of round 2. We've seen it in the Jared fight. Round 1 was all Brunson. He dropped him with the right. He got multiple takedowns, and then he come out in the second, and he just looked so lost in there, man. I think he gassed himself out. So I don't think there's any situation in this fight where Derek has got finishing ability. Yeah, he could catch him with a right or whatever, but even his submissions, it's usually in the later rounds once he's grinding on people, or you're Darren Till and you just give up the neck because you're a bum. But I don't think Plessis is like that. I think he's going to find a KO late round 1 or in round 2, man, for sure.
And speaking of which, I mean, Derek Brunson, you'll always be a legend in my book, brother. 0.25 units to win 7.25 units plus 2,900 to win by sub against Darren Till, that fucking fraud. So how I didn't bet du Plessis by sub, I'll never know. But I do think that, that's the one way they could potentially scoop this fight, where people are going to expect that Derek Brunson, who is a better wrestler, who is a better grappler, technically can't get submitted because he's a better wrestler and grappler technically. And if you guys think that, go rewatch what just happened to Andre Muniz last week when he completely death-gassed in round 1, so he looked like a bum on the ground. The truth is, people come away with that and say, wow, Muniz is a bum on the ground. No. And if you guys see the next first round that he has, when he submits somebody in 30 seconds, you're going to be like, oh my God, this guy's so good on the ground. Look at Brendan Allen. But that's kind of where these things come from. This is a cardio-based sport. ABCs, they always bet on cardio. And that's the one reason you can't really get behind Derek Brunson these days. Like, Derek Brunson just does not look like he has the cardio to go the full 15. And du Plessis looks visibly tired and fights well through it. I can't argue with that. So far, the results haven't been supported by that. Yeah, we all look and say, wow, this guy looks like he's dying. But he keeps going and he keeps pushing. And Derek Brunson last time out, he looked like he was stuck in the mud. And, his corner ended up throwing the towel. Somebody asked, nobody ever throws in the towel in MMA. Like, when's the last time that even happened? I believe the last time that happened in the UFC is when Derek Brunson fought Jared Cannonier and they threw the towel. So it was a brutal, brutal knockout. That's very hard to come back from, especially at this age, especially when you have 5-6 knockout losses in the past. And we know that du Plessis doesn't need to land 1 million ground and pound strikes like he tried to do on Darren Till, which was foolish. He could submit it. So just be wary. As a fan, I'm telling you that.
I agree 100%. That's a good comparison, with Muniz last week. This is just the lesser of two evils here, betting on Plessis, because I just think Derek hasn't got it anymore. But I'm not on board with this guy at all. His cardio is absolute trash. His striking is basic, and he's got these opportunistic submissions and stuff. So, yeah, I don't like him at all. I just do in this fight. And as you say, Derek's made me plenty of money. I bet on Jacare to knock him out. That Edmund Shabazian fight, he was plus 300 money line. That was just crazy. So, yeah, always a fan.
He was plus 150 against Kevin Holland on the money line. I think I bet him on the money line and by decision there. So, and I sprinkled his sub line at like plus 1,400. He didn't get it, but that's why I bet it again against Till, because I was like, he had him in a head and arm choke for 2 minutes. I mean, I'll take that every time.
Crazy.
But we got our prelim headliner, man. Another fight that people are fired up to bet on for whatever goddamn reason. And I told you guys at the beginning of the week, if you guys follow me on Twitter, at Liam Picks Fights, whatever I end up telling you in this breakdown, go to the window with the opposite and you will be A-okay, because I can't seem to get these guys right. Got Cody Garbrandt taking on Trevin 5-Star Jones. And I'll be honest, I just was more bullish than the market on Trevin 5-Star Jones when he came in. I knew he had journeyman tendencies, but I just watched the fights and I said to myself, man, the guy's getting third round subs. He stays in the fight even when it's not going his way. He can get back up from being taken down. He doesn't look like he's going to completely fold up his tent and go home. He's going to keep trying to win the fight for the whole 15 minutes. Those are the things I like about him. At this higher level, he's been exposed a little bit, especially against the better grapplers he goes against. Some of his tricks and techniques, popping out on people's back and things like that, they don't work, so that he just looks way worse and he spends more time being controlled in his fights. Also, not the highest volume guy. He's one of these guys, very rare, but they do come around the UFC. Sam Alvey is another one, but they use their lead hand as their power hand, and they try and deck people with their lead hook as they come in. And Trevin Jones is very live to do that here. Make no mistake, because Cody Garbrandt is beyond washed. He's been washed, I think, for years. And the fact that he had the fight with Rob Font told me more about Rob Font's lack of finishing equity against these guys at 135 than it did about the upside of Cody Garbrandt, to tell you guys the truth. Because you see that Marlon Moraes got folded up with one strike. He's the only person I can think of that's more washed in the chin at this weight class than Cody Garbrandt right now. So for me, I can't bet on somebody who's got a chin like that in this kind of matchup at this price. I also think that grappling for grappling, like, yes, Cody Garbrandt is a better grappler. He's a better wrestler. When's the last time he did that really effectively for a full 15 minutes? He doesn't do it. He hasn't done it. So he could come out and do it here. I think that's very possible. I think the Cody by decision take, I get it. But also Trevin Jones randomly falls apart sometimes, and he gets hurt in every fight. So the idea that this is 100% locked to go to decision, I don't think is fair. I think a lot of people are too bullish on that. I think Cody Garbrandt's best chance to win this fight is probably to land a big knockout shot. I think the biggest danger for him in this fight is that he can easily get knocked out by Trevin Jones on the comeback. So it's a dogger pass for me. I think Trevin Jones might be ripping up some parlays and sending this guy out of the UFC. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a pass fight for me. In my notes, when I seen this one was announced, all I put is "Don't fuck this up, Cody, please." He's vulnerable. I've watched his interviews. He's talking about he's got a mental health coach or whatever, seeing a sports psychiatrist, and the rest of it. It's just such a fall from grace, man. He wins the belt from Dominic Cruz, and then just a massive decline, man, getting knocked out after knockout. And then it's by TJ as well on steroids. And then in his personal life, his missus left him. He talked about that on one of his interviews. Just a massive fall from grace, man. I just think he's lost at the minute. He tries changing weight classes. That's always a bad sign. This is a complete pass. Complete pass for me. Can't trust his chin, man. Can't trust him. But yeah, he should win by knockout. Well, I'm not betting that. Pass for me. Can never bet on a Cody fight.
The only thing that would really get me out of my chair is a decent price on fight ends by KO, which I have not looked for yet. So let me check. Yikes. Minus 230. That's disgusting. So yeah. I will be leaving that the fuck alone. I'll tell you. Wow. What a disgusting
he left his
price.
Misses. Sorry, someone put in the chat he left his missus. I didn't know that. I thought it was the other way around. She was a mess.
Well, that would beg the question, why?
She was a mess, man. I didn't like her at all. But whatever. Let's talk fights.
Yep, on to the next one. So, guys, I want to just say real quick, we got 110 people rocking with us live. Appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. Drop a like on this video if you have not already. Get subscribed to the channel. Doing this each and every week. March, a lot of great fights coming up. So make sure you're here. Subscribe. Turn on that notification bell. You do not want to miss it. Here Thursdays, 3:00 p.m. in the East. Rocking it out. So main card breakdown coming right now. Jamie Pickett versus Bo Nickel. I'll start with this one, man, because Bo Nickel's a guy I've had my eye on for a long time. I am a huge college wrestling fan, especially back in the day. I was an even bigger college wrestling fan when I was wrestling myself, when I was on the come up. And the guys that I had posters of, the guys I'm looking up to are guys like Bo Nickel, who at the top of his game was sensational, right? He was a 3-time college national champion. He was right here for being on the world team for the U.S. against world and Olympic champions. He's wrestling off for the spots. So it's like, this guy is world-class at wrestling. No, make no mistake about that. And on top of that, he's an extremely dynamic athlete. He's an extremely potent entertainer. He comes out there, puts on a show with his performance. He normally goes for big moves, big attacks, puts people to their back, gets the fall, whatever it is, and then he celebrates in big fashion. That's what he does. That's what he is. He is a big game player. In most of the biggest matches of his career, he came up aces in ways that would stun people. Goes to Carver Hawkeye, pins Sammy Brooks in 45 seconds when he's the number 3 ranked guy in the country in the most hostile wrestling environment in the world, goes with the silence the crowd right after, does the same thing in the national finals. Guy who had beaten him in the national finals, Miles Martin, takes him right to his back, pinfall, 45 seconds into the match, stands up and says, that's why we wrestled for Penn State, wins the national title for the team by doing so. The kid has ice in his veins. I think he's going to get this done quickly, early, and very fast, however he wants. Bo, however he wants. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I didn't understand any of that. I don't know. I'm from the UK. I don't understand wrestling at all. But yeah, it sounded good. I've seen people taking the submission line here at minus 170, which I think is just stupid. I don't know what people are thinking. I cashed on Bo in the Dana White Contender Series. That was when his submission was like plus 200, plus 300. Can't remember what it was exactly. Like people are saying in the chat, the KO is the one to bet here. You can get plus 250 on the KO. You look at his, I basically think he's going to win by KO or submission for sure. This is a layup fight. I am a believer in him, fast transitions on the ground. He's got power. Pickett's a bit of a bum. He's a nice guy though, man. He won me over watching his interviews this week. Pickett seems like a good dude. But yeah, why people aren't just taking the KO here. It's 50-50 how he's going to finish. Yeah, more likely the submission because he's a ground fighter. He's going to probably take him down. But, Jamie could shell up and it could be a ground and pound.
Am I crazy for thinking that Donovan Beard is a better fighter than Jamie Pickett?
I don't know about that.
I honestly think that if they were to fight right now, there's no way Jamie Pickett's more than a minus 125 favorite. No way. I don't see that. I think that Beard isn't great, but I think that Beard is like hard to get a hold of. Like outside of Bo Nickel, the guy's made it a fight with everybody he's been in there with. So I think Jamie Pickett would have a tough time with Beard, whereas Bo literally drops him with the right hand into a takedown attempt, into the pass. He's like sitting on him in the mount, knowing that he's going to buck into a triangle. It was like he was just waiting. He's like, all right, here we go. And sit back, and that's over. Like the way he was so clinical with that, I was like, yeah, Jamie Pickett is ruined in round one here. I can't see another way. I think me and you together did the best bet and prop of the week when Kyle Dawkins submitted this guy in the first round, and that's Kyle Dawkins, right? It's like a guy who's not an insanely impressive wrestler, who is a good grappler, but again, he's a good grappler, not a great wrestler, not the most dynamic physical athlete, and he easily took down Jamie Pickett and submitted him in the first round. So can't love that coming in here. Also, Jamie Pickett's absorbed knockdowns. He's been hurt and dropped on the feet before. He looks very uncomfortable every time he's ever gotten hit in his career. I don't know what else to say. They want Bo to win this fight. I think he's going to. I think he's going to make it look really easy. Next up, by the way, guys, in his amateur fights, he does have knockouts. So, like, this is the other thing where people are like, but he only gets this stuff. He could have easily TKO'd either one of those guys if he wanted to. He grabs the wrist, pulls it in, throws 4 punches, the fight's over, right? The guys can't move, so they're going to just get finished. And then on top of that, he just seems like a nice guy. He literally is like, he's like going for the choke. He's looking up at the ref like, come on, man, stop the like it's already over. He did the same thing when he had the triangle on the ground. The guy tapped because it's Mark Smith. He missed it. So then Bo is like, he just tapped. It's all over. Like he's like trying to let go early. So I think he's just been a good Samaritan so far, but maybe Jamie Pickett will get in his face at the face off, something like that, get a little bit of energy going, and Bo Nickel will come out and start him in the first round on the feet. I would not be surprised. Next up, Mateusz Gamrot taking on Jalen Turner. This is a hell of a damn fight, man. I love Jalen Turner, right? Talk about guys that have made me a lot of money. Only person who's made me more money on this card for and against than Derek Brunson is Jalen Turner. Betting him at evens against Brad Riddell, I thought was one of the best of the year last year. He won that fight on the first exchange. First right hand hurts him. Second exchange, takedown into mount into sub. It was just one of the more clinical wins of the year. And he's done that a number of times. So he's an extremely dangerous fighter. I talked about this week on Twitter as well. Even if he doesn't get the sub, he looks for it in every single fight. Against Kulabau, he's looking for it aggressively. Against Frivola, where he got out-wrestled, he was looking for it constantly. And I think that what we have seen over the course of his career is significant improvement on the ground. Jalen Turner was terrible in some places on the ground when he first got to the UFC. He got flatbacked by a Matt Frivola guillotine attempt, and Frivola in his post-fight interview said, I should have finished this fight in round 1. So that's my focus after this camp is I have to go back and clean up my jiu-jitsu mistakes because I had his back. I had these great positions and I couldn't get the finish. And he's right. He had great positions. That's a huge concern against somebody like Mateusz Gamrot, who is an elite grappler, who is an elite wrestler. And I think people are definitely discounting how good he is. What I think can't be discounted, however, is the physicality and the unique gifts on the Jalen Turner side, because he does have some things that make it hard to wrestle. He throws big knees to the body. He does have an explosive game off of his back. And when he gets space, he can hurt you really bad in an instant. So he's got very effective tools. But Garbrandt, I think, needs this win very badly for his career. He's the older guy. He needs this win to keep his spot in the top 5 in the rankings. And he's fought murderer after murderer after murderer. They are not giving him a soft landing, but they're giving him a fighter that he has a grappling advantage over for the first time in a long time. And people will forget that against Jeremy Stephens, people weren't talking about his lack of top control. They were talking about how fast he passed his guard and finished it, right? When he got to the ground, he made it look easy. So the one thing that I'm very concerned for Jalen Turner in this fight is that we've seen positions where he was taken down by Jamie Malarkey, basically using a football tackle. Basically, he just went head down, run him into the chest, took him down to the ground with a body lock. Garbrandt doesn't really do those things, but Garbrandt does have really, really good wrestling sequences. If he does not get hit with a knee to the head on the way in, which I think is possible as well, I think Garbrandt is going to have success wrestling in this fight. So then it becomes a much harder fight for Jalen Turner to win. Can he hurt him? Yes. Can he get an opportunistic sub? Yes. Are we putting that anywhere above 20%, 25%? Probably not. So I think Garbrandt is probably the side here, but am I laying minus 250, minus 220 with any fighter in the UFC right now against Jalen Turner? I'm not bullish about doing that, truthfully. Maybe an Islam Makhachev or somebody like that, where the wrestling and grappling is just super consistent. But the one thing about Garbrandt is he does leave a little bit of space at times. I think that if he goes too low on the legs, he could get ground and pound knocked out by Jalen Turner. That's the one real concern I have, is he buries his head low oftentimes. And I know that Jalen Turner has the length to hold his head down and try and bash him with hammer fists. And I think that's a path. I think the one element of this fight that's gone under discussed is the fact that Jalen Turner's chin is very questionable, guys. He hasn't been tested in a long time to the chin, but in the past, it hasn't been there, to meet the test. He's been knocked out a number of times. He's been knocked out in the first round more than once. And some of the knockouts are really brutal. The Vicente Luque fight, his manager should be executed for that. I mean, just put him in there with a no-win situation, and he absorbed a lot of damage. Vicente Luque, I used to call him the death dealer of 170. That was one of the most vicious knockouts you'll ever see. He's like holding the guy by the back of the head, just punching him into just unconsciousness. Like, it is brutal. So I think that can't be slept on here. Garbrandt does have some power. He put down Scott Holtzman, who's not a guy getting knocked out in every fight. And he also, if he gets to grounded positions early and often, he might just gas this guy out and finish with ground and pound. So don't sleep on Mateusz Garbrandt. He's a gamer for a reason. Jalen Turner's a great fighter, but he's young and he's got a lot of time to grow still. And I think he's still a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mateusz Gamrot's been about that grappling life for a long time. I think he's a different level. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I like Garbrandt in this situation. I've bet on Turner before. I've cashed on him by sub before, etc. But in this one, I like Garbrandt. I think he's going to put on a wrestling clinic. I think he may even find the submission. I think go and watch the Frivola fight with Turner, and that's pretty much how this plays out. Turner's going to hit the guillotines on the takedown attempts, and he's not going to find them. And I just think there's a big difference in the ground game, man. And people are talking about Garbrandt can't hold people down. He wasn't able to do this and that, but he was fighting Beneil Dariush, man, and Arman and Diego Ferreira, who's like a legit black belt.
By the way, I have to just mention, because you brought that up, I had Garbrandt sub 2 against Diego Ferreira, and he locks in the rear naked choke. Diego Ferreira goes, my rib. And they stop the fight and call it a TKO because of an injured rib. I wanted to puke in my effing hands. Please continue.
Yeah, he's got legit subs in him, Garbrandt has, man. And Turner, man, if Frivola was on his game that day a little bit more, he could have got a sub very easily, man. He had guillotines on him. He had the back at one point, like he said himself. I think the only way Garbrandt loses this one is by getting knocked out on the feet. And yeah, Turner is huge for the weight class. He's absolutely massive. I don't even know how he makes weight. So that is something that could happen. But I think it's very low percentage, man. I think most likely Garbrandt wins a decision or he finds a submission along the way. And I don't mind the price either, man. He opened, minus 180. He's now sitting like, minus 220. The submission opened a big 460, and now it's all the way down to 230. So money is obviously coming in on it. So yeah, I'm getting on board the train, man.
Yeah, and just in terms of the measurables here, I think that that's what's going to make people gravitate to the Turner side. 5 years younger is Turner. He's going to come in with a 5-inch height advantage. He's going to come in with a 7-inch reach advantage. So Jalen Turner, on paper, lots of love here. Can't blame anybody for taking the underdog shot, but I think it's very interesting that Garbrandt opens the big favorite here. 65% indication. That's pretty bullish from the odds makers. And then what happens? People come in on it, especially respected people early in the week, push the number out to minus 2xx. Make it parlay fodder, make people lay this with a couple other lines that hopefully don't come through. That for me is what the bookmaker's strategy is here. So I like the Garbrandt side here, but not super bullish because, like I mentioned, Jalen Turner, not a guy I'm trying to get my money in front of. I think he's extremely dangerous. I think he's on the come up, but Garbrandt inside the distance, Garbrandt by sub, those are some plays that I don't mind on the Garbrandt side. And also this fight not to go the distance. I think that there's ways that it could go, but I think it's more likely than not somebody's getting finished here. Gamrot's coming in on the week's notice, but I also think he's an extremely dangerous guy. Most of the time when Jalen Turner loses, it's inside the distance. He is 0-2 career to the decision, though, as well, which is important to note because Garbrandt, he's a gamer for a reason. He's won a lot of close decisions, but he did lose a close one to Guram as well in the UFC. So something to keep in mind. That was in a similar price range. He was a big favorite there. But if you listen to his partners from American Top Team, they said he came in beyond injured for that fight and that he should have never taken it. Did you have something, Rich?
Yeah, just another thing to mention. I don't even think Turner's that great of a striker, man. I think he wins in the striking battle against people because he's fighting bum Aussies like fucking Malarkey and Brad Riddell, who's obviously got a huge hole in his ground game. Kulabau. I know Kulabau won in his last fight, but he's still a bum to me, man. He just had a good matchup fighting that Melsic guy. So yeah, Turner's strength of competition when he wins isn't great, man. Medic, Brock Weaver, Kalen Potter. You know what I mean? I don't think he's that great. He just wins because he's massive for the weight class. And
I do think the UFC really likes him, though. That's the one thing I'll mention is like I went back through it. So first of all, they gave him Dan Hooker, right? Like they ended up giving him Garbrandt on short notice, but they were trying to give him the Dan Hooker fight, which I thought could have went either way. But it's like certainly a guy that not going to audit him on the ground, right? Totally different matchup. It was going to be predicated on Dan Hooker's normally the big guy on the feet. He would be, and in that fight, an average size guy on the feet to Jalen Turner. And then, I think on the ground, Jalen Turner would have an advantage there, if ever so slight. So for me, that was a fight that was a lot more advantageous for Turner. Now the UFC scrambles, says, hey, we want to get you a fight. We want to keep you on the card. We know you're a tough kid who'll take on any challenge. So we're going to give you this fight, which is probably tough, where hopefully you don't get hurt. Hopefully you don't get knocked out. Garbrandt, more so a grappler, a wrestler, a submission threat. I think that's kind of the UFC's logic here. Jalen's young, and he's had a lot of UFC experience, but he still needs to do that growing. Look at it where he's positioned with the Ruka gym, with a bunch of really talented guys, Carlson, Gracie, Riverside. It's not like he's not going to continue to get better and improve, but just might be biting off a little bit more than he wants to chew at this point in his career. He was going to be fighting Dan Hooker, guy on a big losing streak. Now he's fighting a guy who is just against title contenders. So it's like way different quality of competition, I would say. Here. And I think that it's a fight that favors Garbrandt, but again, I'm not quite as bullish as going out there and saying it's better than 70%, which is what the line implies right now.
Who would you have bet in the Hooker fight? Who would you have taken?
Jalen Turner, inside the distance.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that would have been a competitive fight, but I think that the opportunity to snatch the neck on somebody like Hooker might have been there. I think that they would have traded knees to the body and certain things. I think it would have been a competitive fight, but I think Jalen Turner as the younger, fresher guy might have came out the better end of that. And I would have took the subs. Oh, I like it. I mean, the other thing is Dan is like good at all the same things in a lot of ways as
yeah.
So that would have made for a really compelling fight, compelling action fight. And I think there's a non-insignificant chance that Dan would have knocked him out because Dan still hits with a lot of power and can answer him from a longer range than a lot of these guys. But we can move along here to the next fight. Oh, talking about, I mean, there's 3 guys on this card that have made me a lot of money. And the third one is our friend Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's in the featured bout here at 170 pounds, taking on Jeff Neal. I got to take back Rakhmonov for this one because Jeff Neal is not a slouch. I don't think he's an easy fight. I don't think he's a pushover for almost anybody in the 170-pound division. Talk about the Neil Magny fight. You got to get that one off the table. He was basically coming back off of sepsis, off of like congenital heart failure or something. Like the guy was in dire straits in his health. And I don't know what compelled him to take that fight, but he looked terrible against Neil Magny. And I bet him against Neil. So that was for me where I was like, well, I got to take a step back here from the Jeff Neal side because I thought that was a natural bounce back spot for him after Wonder Boy. I bet Wonder Boy big against him. I was like, Wonder Boy, really dynamic striker. Jeff Neal's not a guy who's going to mix it up. He's not going for takedowns. He's not really introducing much more than big, powerful left hands that can kill you. And against somebody like Vicente Luque, who struggled with southpaws, who struggled with Bilal Muhammad, a non-traditional striker, when he switched to that southpaw stance, that was something that told me, maybe the writing's on the wall here. Didn't end up putting down a big bet, but I did pick Jeff Neal in that fight. I had a small wager on him, and I thought that he was the clear side at the plus money number, even though Vicente is one of my favorite welterweights. So now you've got 2 guys that I really like, 2 guys that I'd want to get behind. One of them's minus 500. So I can't get behind the Shavkat money line this week. If you were going to play Shavkat, I would be a little bit untraditional here. I would try and get creative. Shavkat in his last fight nearly went to the 3rd round with Neil Magny, which I was a little bit surprised by. I thought he was just going to clean up Neil in the 1st round. I did bet heaps and heaps of money on Shavkat to win by sub against Neil Magny. I've said it before on this show, on these airwaves, with all due respect, there are some guys in the BJJ world that are sharks and some guys that are fish. And Neil Magny is a fish. And when you get a shark like Gilbert Burns, when you get a shark like Shavkat Rakhmonov, you got to just take the sub line and hope for the best. Because those guys could win by knockout. They could get to a dominant spot and throw a bunch of ground and pound. But eventually, Neil Magny, who's got really long arms and a long neck, he's just waiting to be choked. He's just a guy that gets choked. He's a fish. So when you have those kind of guys, that's a good spot. I don't think that Jeff Neal is a fish. I think that Jeff Neal is probably not as good as Shavkat on the ground. So he's going to want to keep it upright. He's going to want to keep distance. He's normally pretty decent at doing that. He's not an easy guy to take down. I think Shavkat's a little bit different. I think if he gets a takedown, he's probably going to be able to keep Jeff Neal down for considerable points of time. Just because he's got a long frame, he's awkward to deal with on the ground. But I think on the feet, this is a much more contentious fight. I think that Shavkat should be able to pick his spots. He's the better kicker. But Jeff's got a decent left high kick as well. He's got decent southpaw mechanics, just what you normally see from southpaws that works. Thunderous left hand, thunderous left kick to the body and the head. So it's a southpaw double attack. He does it very well. I think Shavkat's going to be well prepared for that, though. I think that he's a pretty savvy guy. I think he's sophisticated. So I think unless he gets knocked out in this fight, he should win at a decent clip. But again, minus 500. The odds makers agree. The general public agrees that this is a Shavkat side. So do you disagree? Do you like the Jeff Neal side here? What do you think? I think that Jeff Neal by knockout at 10-1, you could do worse than looking that way. But for me, I'd be looking more towards Shavkat later round props and probably by decision as a contrarian play. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the sub is square for the Shavkat side. I do like him to win this one. I like the decision plus 300. I don't mind some like round 3 KO props for Shavkat. But yeah, I don't think Neal's going to do much here. I think he's going to be on his bike. He's going to keep the distance, try and run away from the fight, pop shot him coming in. But yeah, I think he's just going to avoid the fight, man. And that's going to stretch it out over 1.5 is something like minus 150. I don't think that's bad odds considering. But yeah, I like the decision, man.
Yeah, and you just look historically. Jeff Neal's not a guy who's getting cleaned up in the 1st and 2nd round. It's just not happening. So when he's lost before, it's been late. It's been round 3. But also, Shavkat's never been to decision, right? And he's had 16 professional fights. Eventually, he's going to go to decision. They're treating it like this is a very possible outcome in this fight. So when you have somebody who's tough like Jeff Neal, who is not, a bottom tier welterweight. I don't think he's a guy who's trending down on the way out. I think he could have more relevant wins in the welterweight division against the right opponent. So all those things considered, I don't think Jeff Neal's the kind of guy who just gets flatlined in round one at a very high clip here. He's not Carlston Harris. He's not Neil Magny even in terms of his upside. I don't think Neil Magny's ever going to fight for a UFC title. I wouldn't be stunned if that ever happened for Jeff Neal. He's been in main events. He's been positioned well in a lot of fights. But this is the kind of fight where the rubber meets the road, where having a one-dimensional game can get you in trouble. And I think that having big power punching, it's a path to victory. But against somebody like Shavkat, who can take you down, who can grind you against the fence, who can hit you from distance, who can mix in the kicks, I think it's a lot to ask here. So I understand people playing the number on Jeff Neal. We're betting numbers, not fighters. But I also think it's a really tough sub, man. I think Shavkat is going to be a hard guy to beat. And I think you're going to have a really comprehensive, well-rounded skill set. And I just haven't seen that from Jeff Neal yet. I think that we've seen a lot of positive elements, a lot of potential, but I just haven't seen, Jeff Neal mix it up for the full 15 minutes and come out looking aces. So I've seen that from Shavkat where, I felt like he looked great going into that. If that was going to be a third round, he would have been minus 10,000 going into that third round with Neil Magny because it never looked like it was in danger. So
big size difference too, man, between them. I think that's going to play a part for sure. Length,
reach, height, a lot of things favoring Shavkat here. And I also think he's the younger fighter. Pulling up the Tapology now to double check. Yeah, 4 years younger, a little bit more than 4 years younger on the Shavkat side. So a lot of things to like anthropomorphically about the Kazakh fighter here as well. But he's a big favorite to boot. Next up, guys, we've got a title fight to break down in the women's flyweight division. Before we do, just want to mention this show, all the content I do, brought to you by PrizePicks, easiest game in all of DFS. If you guys are unfamiliar, all the information you need is in the description box below, but you use my promo code Liam, they'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Thank you very much for your time and your interest. Now, back to the fights. Valentina Shevchenko, 23-3, taking on Alexa Grasso, 15-3. Oh boy. She got me, Rich. I really thought I got her. I had 2 units plus 450. I was already counting the money, just like my girl Amanda Ribas. I had to stop some Brazilian hate, dude. Talia Santos gets jobbed out. Absolutely brutal. Thought she did enough. Thought she won the first 3 rounds. Think if there was no clash of heads, might have gone 4-1 her way. So it was a frustrating fight as far as I'm concerned. And now you're getting the same price to run it back. Different fighter, though, in Alexa Grasso. Pros and cons, right? I think that on the feet, she's a little bit more measured. She's a little bit more composed. I felt like Talia Santos, especially down the stretch in that fight, fell apart a little bit down on the feet. Didn't really comport herself like a champion. Could have swayed the fight. Could have gotten her one of those last 2 rounds, changed the outcome. So I think that Alexa Grasso showed a lot of poise in her last fight against Araujo. I thought that she looked good over the course of 5 rounds there. I also think we've seen an evolution of her ground game over time. I believe she came into the UFC as a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from Mexico, not the highest pedigree on the world stage. So all these things considered, the growth that she's made in the grappling, I think, is very impressive. She's beating contemporaries that have been working on it for longer, that are higher credentialed belts in the UFC, like Joanne Calderwood, who I don't think very highly of, but I do have to recognize she's a higher ranked BJJ practitioner, and she was able to submit her quite easily in that fight. Also, what have we noticed about Yair Rodriguez? A few of these fighters showing skills in all positions. Brandon Moreno, skills in all positions, got a win, won the title via submission. Yair Rodriguez secured a title via submission. So I have some interest, in potentially playing the submission prop here for the Alexa Grasso side if I'm to get involved. I called Talia Santos absolutely ragdolling her on the ground. I felt vindicated as I watched the fight. I said, when's the last time she faced somebody who is a threat to her physically? Is that same physical threat there against Grasso? No, I'm not sure. I think that Grasso is maybe not quite as physical, but I think she's more of a slickster. I think she's more of a finesse player. Whereas, you look at her credentialing, she's a higher belt rank than somebody like Talia Santos, which I think people forget. Talia Santos was a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu out there running shit on the ground like it was no big deal. And she's very strong. So that's what she brought to the table in terms of assets. Whereas I think that Grasso is very smart and she's very technical. So I think that Shevchenko is dangerous. I think she's a talented fighter. But I also think you look at the body of work, you look at some of these performances, and you could poke holes. You could say, man, she fought a lot of soccer moms. She fought a lot of women that are older than she is. She fought a lot of women that she had clear, distinct advantages in both categories. She could outstrike them. She could out-wrestle them. Where are they going to pose her a threat? And yet she gave up a takedown in the whole round, flat off her back to Jennifer Maia. You could go back and find tape of her getting out-wrestled, out-grappled by Juliana Penne before she found that submission off her back. You know, she spent a considerable amount of time in the bottom position there. Absolutely got to block you for that crypto watch. Please don't spam the chat. Appreciate you guys, though. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, man, the bottom line, I can't bet on Valentina Shevchenko at these huge numbers. Period, point blank. No question about it. I think she's going to lose soon. I think Erin Blanchfield should be favored against her. So, yeah, I'm bullish on the fading Valentina train. Does the train come this weekend? What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I'm betting Grasso, and I'm betting Grasso by sub. I think she's going to get it done. I don't like Valentina at minus 900 here. It looks like the line's proper blowing out here. Grasso's now plus 600. So a lot of money coming in on Valentina. They all think she's going to get it done. Yeah, I like some narratives as well. We spoke about it a little bit, you know, the UFC opening the PI in Mexico. It was part of the reason why I was so confident in Moreno and Yair Rodriguez to get it done. I think narratives are good sometimes, you know, aside from the actual matchup themselves. They've been pushing this week about her being the first female Mexican to fight for a title. I think Valentina's getting older now. She's, 34? She is going to relinquish the belt at some point. And I'm on the Valentina fade train, man. So I don't mind taking Grasso at these odds. You know, she's pretty decent everywhere. She's now a purple belt. You mentioned a BJJ. She's got good hands, arguably better hands than Valentina. You know, Valentina's got the kicks. And it seems like in most of her fights now, she likes the body lock takedown. And that's what, you know, that was to her detriment against Talia Santos, who's on steroids, who was just stronger in the clinch and was able to reverse her and get on top.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? I want my fighters on steroids. I mean, come on, let's be serious.
Hey, I don't mind it, man. Take all the steroids you want. It makes it interesting if you ask me. But yeah, Grasso, you know, she's not that physical. You know, she's small, she's tiny. She could probably go down a weight class maybe. But yeah, she's got strong hands, man. She was tagging up Macy Barber, I think it was, when I was watching some tape. And yeah, I just think the sub's wide, man, at like what, plus 2,000, something stupid like that.
25-1.
Yeah, just crazy, man. She can snatch an armbar. Go watch Shevchenko versus Penne in the first round. I think she got stopped by the clock. You know, that armbar was in, man. Another 10 seconds and she might have got that. You know, I think Shevchenko is doing well on the ground because she's stronger than these girls, but I don't think she's technically better than these girls. I don't know if you've got the answer to this question, but what belt is Valentina in BJJ? Because I couldn't find out.
Dude, I have no idea. I think she's probably one of these people that isn't like a formal jiu-jitsu student. I think she's probably just like a grappler, like a no-gi grappler who's been on the mats her whole life, training, you know, sambo, like whatever you want to call it. That's not quite Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but it's just submission wrestling, submission grappling. That's what it seems like to me. Yeah.
So she's nothing special in the BJJ department. I think Grasso can get an arm bar or something in transition. You know, I've put a quarter of a unit on it, nothing crazy, you know, but it's massive odds. If I hit it, I'll look like a genius and I'll be bragging about it for the next month. So yeah, I'm taking a shot on Grasso. I think the time's coming for Valentina. And yeah, it could be on Saturday night.
And if not, you martingale it onto Erin Blanchfield, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I love it. All right. We've come to that time. Ladies and gentlemen, what a damn fight. Jon Jones, Ciryl Gane, main event, 265-pound weight limit. Don't know what these gentlemen are going to weigh in at just yet. Weigh-ins will be tomorrow, but Jon Jones, first time up at heavyweight. I'm excited to see it. I think that Ciryl Gane is a deserving challenge. You know, I think that in terms of guys that you'd want to see Jon Jones pitted against, I think that he'd be in my top 3 in the heavyweight class. So the Stipe Miocic fight has some nostalgic value, things like that. But I don't think Stipe is along for the heavyweight division. So I'm glad that they're actually moving in this direction. I think these are two guys that will be around for a little while. Jon doesn't think that Gane's going to be around for a while. I thought that was interesting. He said he's only here for a short time, but I think both these guys have real talent. You know, the difference is one guy is stupid in this his whole life. I mean, when you look at Jon Jones, 10 years prior, he made his UFC debut. I put out a tweet that got zero traction about the debuts of these guys, but the truth was, I thought it was really compelling. Like, Jon made his UFC debut the same year he made his pro debut. So, like, he went from just like, he basically did his first 4 fights in as many months and then was in the UFC all like that. And he's been fighting in the UFC ever since. So I think the idea of most guys taking time off is probably a bad thing. And it's yet to be seen. It's certainly an unknown and open question about how it's going to look for Jon. But I think that there's a chance that Jon taking time off could be of some benefit to him. When you've been fighting your whole life, the only thing that can happen is your body wears down, breaks down over time. So if you stay in there constantly active, you're going to lose 100% chance. Whereas I think if you give yourself these breaks, these pauses, it's extended the longevity of Jon Jones' career. Khabib Nurmagomedov, he was fighting with a little bit more frequency. And what happened? He's gone. He's just retired. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's a lot of pressure. Every champion who's ever held the belt for a while has said the same thing. George St. Pierre, was like, I'm relieved to give up the title. Like, I just want to give this up and get out of here, and you guys move on without me. So I think that for Jon Jones, I understand his rationale in taking some time off. Additionally, I have a long-standing theory of fighting, of grappling, of wrestling, which is that the heavier they are, the worse they are. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying, like, I've been around the sport for a long time. I've wrestled with a lot of people that are 125 pounds that skill for skill would dunk on everybody I've ever wrestled with at 285, but they never accomplished anything because the overall level of skill is a lot higher. The overall level of competition is higher. If you have skills, if you're athletic at heavyweight, you're an anomaly. You're one of the rare ones. You are an exception. And so I feel like for Ciryl Gane, the reason he's ascended the ranks of mixed martial arts so quickly is because he's an exceptional athletic heavyweight. He can move around. He's functional. He can kick. He's dynamic. He's light on his feet. He can throw. He's got soccer skills, so he can actually kick and throw with some decent mechanics. Like, there's a lot about Gane to like athletically. And I think that Jon has given up some of his athleticism over time. But I think that skill for skill, Jon is still levels above him in a lot of MMA categories, especially wrestling and grappling. And the problem that I have in ascertaining who's going to win this fight is that I have not seen recent samples of Jon Jones taking people down and dominating them. But the reason I can't get bullish on the Ciryl Gane side is because Francis Ngannou didn't have that either. There was no tape of Francis Ngannou just ragdolling people and easily getting takedowns, except for on his regional scene, which he was against taxi drivers, respectfully. And then when you look at his fights in the UFC, he had one very nice takedown against Stipe Miocic, where Stipe went to take him down. He said, no, sir, counter takedown, threw him to the ground and got some ground and pound off that really messed up Stipe's equilibrium. So I think that Ciryl Gane has some clear question marks and red flags. I think that he's done some of the right things. I tweeted out as well, and it did get some traction. Devontae Johnson, nicknamed Bones BJJ, funny enough, came in as the training partner for Ciryl Gane, one of the training partners they brought in. He is a super heavyweight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion in the gi and in no gi. So very talented fighter. But is he going to bring the same danger factor of somebody like Jon Jones? Because the thing about Jon that makes him a threat is that his ground and pound has always been one of the best tools in his arsenal. And I think if he's able to set up shop on top of somebody at the heavyweight class, they're not getting back up. I think he's going to finish them on the ground. So those are the things for me that make me ultimately have to lean with Jon Jones. Also, guys, I'm sitting right now in the great state of New York. I am biased as shit that the American badass, that the New York badass is going to come here and teach these boys how to wrestle once again. So I think that Ciryl Gane, game, real fighter, talented, could be back at the heavyweight championship level. I think this is a very difficult fight for Ciryl Gane. I thought that the Francis Ngannou fight was a little bit more than he could chew at the time. I think the same thing about this fight. I do think he'll be back, but I got to go with Jon Jones. Bones. New York's in the building, baby. Let's go. What do you got, Rich?
Yeah, this is a big fight for me. I'm on the Jones side. I actually don't like Ciryl Gane at all. I looked at his record, moreover, and he started in 2018, man. that was when John Jones was putting out the likes of Alexander Gustafsson in their rematch, which doesn't even seem that long ago. I know John's been off for 3 years, but that's flown by, man. So yeah, you go and look at Ciryl Gane, and we know that the UFC, they're short on heavyweights, you know, and they see a big guy in Ciryl. You know, he had 3 fights in France or whatever. They brought him into the UFC. He gets bums by the likes of Pessoa, Dante Mays, Tanner Bosa, who's a bit undersized, in my opinion. And then when he wins them, they try and get him into
Bosa's moving down to 205, to your point.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, then they give him, you know, some names to get him into the top 10, into the ranks. Junior Dos Santos, who was on his way out and vulnerable. Rosenstruck, who's one-dimensional. You know, Derek Lewis. These are people he can, you know, implement his game on. You know, stand on the outside, pepper people with shots. I don't think he's got much power for heavyweight Gane. You know, he likes to throw his kicks. He likes to play the point game. If you wilt in there and you fade, you know, he'll take the KO or the, you know, the submission like he did against Derek Lewis or Tai Tuivasa, who's just a brawler who ran out of steam. You know, he's not technical like Gane. So, yeah, I'm unimpressed with Gane. And then you go back and watch the Ngannou fight, and it was just absolutely disgusting, man. You know, Ngannou's no great wrestler, no great jiu-jitsu practitioner. He was getting him down with body lock takedowns. Once he was down, you know, Gane wasn't holding Ngannou in place, you know, with the leg locks, you know, keeping him on top. At any point, Ngannou could have got full mount on him. And if John Jones gets him down, and, you know, you better believe he's getting full mount, and he ain't, you know, showing any mercy like Ngannou did. He's going to lock up a sub. He's going to land some elbows in ground and pound. He's going to be a lot more relentless than Ngannou was, man. And this is a wrap. So yeah, I'm going big on this one. I'm betting on Jones. I'm betting in the distance for quite a few units, and I prefer the sub over the KO. So yeah, I think John smashes him, man. People are talking about other stuff like, you know, John's been off for a while. Yeah, this is all true, but so was Tatiana Suarez, man. She was coming back from a bad knee injury. She looked just fine to me. I don't think ring rust always plays a part. It depends on who the person is. So yeah, betting on Jones big. Don't mind his little pot belly or whatever you see in the pictures. I think he smashes Gane. And you know what? I've got another narrative. I think Ngannou comes back, man. We've seen this little spat between John and Ngannou over the last couple of weeks. You know, they're starting this little rivalry. Maybe John's taunting him. I said it the other day. I think Ngannou's a complete retard. I think his reason for leaving the UFC has got nothing to do with like equal pay or contracts or, you know, healthcare. It's purely because being in the UFC, he's not able to go and do boxing events, which is what he wanted. So he cuts ties with the UFC. You know, he acts like a hero. I was standing up for the fighters, which is all bullshit. What he really wanted was boxing fights. It's been 2 months now. No one gives a shit about him. No one, Eddie Hearn ain't phoning him up saying, yeah, come and fight my guy Anthony Joshua or whatever. I think he's not going to get the offers. He's going to get offers from Bellator, PFL, and the money's not going to be that great. And I think he's going to come back to the UFC, man, and fight John Jones. That's my prediction.
You know what's funny, man, is I feel like this fight, whoever wins is going to look like a hindsight, minus 300 favorite. Because, like, I envision either Ciryl Gane is dancing on the outside and it's a competitive kickboxing match, and Ciryl is just a little bit, like, lighter, fresher, whatever. That's my vision of a Ciryl Gane victory, right? Like, if he was to win this fight, I feel like he's got to win by decision more often than not. We've seen Jones in a couple competitive decisions recently. But I also feel like if John Jones wins this fight, more often than not, it's John Jones getting a takedown and looking like an absolute hindsight massive favorite, because you can't close a gap on the ground in a very short period of time. It's just hard to do.
Well, he's a white belt.
Yeah, virtually. And I think that he says, you know, since I started in MMA, you know, I've been training my grappling. All right, so 5 years. Like, John Jones has been wrestling since he was in diapers. Like, he's just a different quality of wrestler. He's in the programs for the New York State Wrestling Championships and everything else. So John Jones, been around, been doing it. And, you know, for me, the only concerns that I have is his ragtag bunch of partners. He brought out America's, you know, Walt Harris, freaking Mo Green. Like, he literally took like the recent releases of the UFC, and he's like, "Guys, come out to my farm in Albuquerque." Like,
Bro,
brutal.
Maurice Green is the most ghetto, nastiest man I've ever seen, man. Like, I couldn't believe it when he said, I'm training with, hyping him up. Walt Harris, I thought he was taking the piss.
He says Mo Green is never late to practice. Mo Green and some other guy that I'd never heard of. Never late to practice.
Because he's probably getting paid some good money for it, man. Is he even in the UFC still?
No, Mo Green has been cut for sure.
No. Yeah, getting back to Gane, man. I think he's a white belt, man. The transitions on the ground with Ngannou hasn't got submissions, and he was even trying to go for guillotines and stuff. He leaves his neck wide open.
Anthony Hamilton with a strength Kimura. If you remember that, he literally took him down and was like, and just like ripped his shoulder off. And Anthony Hamilton was like, "Who is this guy? And why has he ripped my arm off?"
Yeah, I do remember that, man. But yeah, there's other arguments as well. People are saying, but they did the same thing with Blanchfield, man. It pisses me off. They play MMA maths. They're like, oh, she couldn't take Aldrich down. She got outstruck by Aldrich, and now she's going to be Andrade. It's like, it's a different fucking fight, man. The same with John Jones. Like, they point to the Reyes fight and say it's concerning because Reyes arguably won that fight and got the better of him. It's a heavyweight now. It's a different weight class. It's a different opponent. It's different styles. Like, you can't play that kind of like MMA maths. It just doesn't work, man. Yeah, I'll be back here next week saying I fucking told you so. And John Jones is the new heavyweight champ, man. Guarantee it.
Love it. So, guys, there you have it. We are just about at the 90-minute mark. I feel like we covered everything in pretty good depth. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you have the next 4 minutes to get them in the chat because we're going to wrap it in under that 90-minute mark today. 147 people rocking with us live here as we close out that main event. So appreciate all of you guys for being here. Rich, if you have any closing thoughts, things you want to get off your chest, let the people know where they can find you as we let some of these questions pour in.
Yeah, same as always, man. Check me out on Twitter. I sometimes put out some funny tweets, sometimes some dickhead ones. But yeah, follow me on Twitter. If you want my full bets and breakdowns, join my Patreon. There's a link on the Twitter as well. Only $12, not much. So yeah, and go put some money on fucking John Jones, man. Don't be stupid.
I like it. I like it. We got a lot of great comments here as well. Somebody's asking for a parlay that we like. Normally don't do this because I'll tell you guys what, I'm not a huge parlay bettor, just as a rule, as a general principle. But for the sake of the show, for the sake of the homies watching, I will say I'll go fight doesn't go to decision. Or in fact, you know what? F that. We'll go fight doesn't go to decision for the Trevin Jones, Cody Garbrandt fight. I'll fade everybody on that. And then I'll go with Bo Nickel by knockout and John Jones ITD. That's going to get you over 10-1 for sure. So that would be something that I would look at this week for a couple bucks for fun if you're looking to get down with a degenerate parlay. So shout out to Car Life of VP. Trying to hit you with that. Do you got anything, Rich, or not for you?
Yeah, I think Loki, outside of the John Jones winning, I think Loki's safe. I think he's safe. He's going to get it done in the opener. And I like fight doesn't go the distance in the Brunson fight. Maybe parlay them too, man.
Love it. Love it. All right, folks, there we have it. That's the show. God bless you all. Enjoy the fights. UFC 285 is going to be an absolute banger. If you are new to my show, my name is Liam. I pick fights each and every week here on YouTube. We do this show, also put out some other content, UFC, Never Have I Ever, a couple different things. So make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. Drop a like on this video, show some love, and drop a comment below. What's your favorite bet on the card today, guys? Curious to hear where you guys are lining up. 14 fights, a lot of great opportunities. So make sure you pick the right spots. If you guys are looking for more information from me, all my information is in the description box below. You can find me every week dropping information at the Lab VIP. I put it out as early as I can. Spreadsheets, social media A-sides, prop breakdowns, everything that you can imagine, a ton of information. That's what I put in there. So God bless you all. Guys, have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you on the flip side and go win some bets at UFC 285. Take care, everybody.